All right, green, white Hydras. So what makes a Hydra deck? We've got the Vicious Watcher here. Hydra spells cost you 4 less to cast. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, this fights target creature you don't control. We have Ironscale Hydra. If damage would be dealt to it, prevent that damage and put a 1/1 counter on it. Voracious Hydra here, one of our payoffs for the Watcher. We've got God's Willing to protect our creatures and trigger this. We've got a couple copies of Hydra's Growth here, which are probably too cheeky. We've got some Stonecoil Serpents. I actually think before we dive in, I'm going to flip this one to be another Voracious Hydra. Doomblade Hydra sounds good. No Seasons of Growth. What was that one? Why would I play Seasons of Growth in my deck that has 4 things that target my creatures? As always, if you're going to make card suggestions, make good card suggestions. Don't just shout card names or put card names with question marks. Tell me what problem you think my deck has that's solved by your suggestion, and ideally what you would be cutting for it. Hey, thanks for the biddies, Optic. Sure, but like, again, if you actually talk about and dissect what you're doing, Eric Dared, like, Seasons of Growth doesn't impact the legendary at all. Like, it impacts the things I'm targeting my creatures with, but it doesn't actually do what you just suggested there, which is maximize that legendary in any way, shape, or form. So again, by focusing on the details, it's easier to engage with people's suggestions. It's easier to understand why they're making the suggestion they are. I mean, we're not just playing a Splash for God's Willing. We have Knight of Autumn as well. Would love an untapped land that doesn't hurt me here. Hey, Alert, thank you for the 3rd of a year. I appreciate that. So, Stonecoil Serpent here will let us jump up in front of the Spellbreaker nicely, which is great. They're Robber of the Rich, not robbing anything particularly useful at the moment. Stonecoil, notably also immune to Domri's Ambush, which is one of the most often their pieces of removal in the opponent's archetype. They can have Bone Crusher Giant as well, but that'll require them to trade their Robber of the Rich. Questerson, yep. So we'll take 4 here, down to 12. We just play Questerson of our own. Since we drew the untapped land, Rar. Nice, Beansy. Crunch. Hey, Beansy, did you see we're going to try and kill the Brutal Boss today? And moving forward, we shuffled around some people in the raid clans so we could stack as many of the people that can hit the Brutal CB as possible into Hoaglandia. So I think we could start killing that if we start spending keys there instead of spending keys on... Is this the cleave? Is the cleave coming? Believe in the cleave? Well, can't beat cleave anyways, right? Might as well block around. Is there room in the Hoaglandia clan? If you're 2 or 3 keying the Brutal Boss, I can shuffle someone in for you. So we have 5 different raid clans that are Hoaglandia related. Oh gosh, Questing Beast stops protection. Oh, I'm so dumb. Protection is such a dumb mechanic. There's just like so many things that you have to remember. Oh, protection. Well, you know. We came, we died. So, obviously my block on Spellbreaker was wrong. I was expecting my thing to live. Questing Beast text was like, JK, LOL. Yeah, and like, in my mind, the actual text on this card is kill The actual text on this card is kill something with fog. Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's so... Is this card playable? I'm not sure that it is. This also doesn't work in the face of Questing Beast. Feels bad, man. Yeah, like, so sorry, to complete my thought, in my mind, Questing Beast says fogs don't work. It doesn't turn off protection. So, like, my head shortcuts to this turns off fogs, not this prevents damage generically. Yep, yeah, Stomp stops protection as well. In my opinion, it's even more obnoxious that they finally brought back protection while simultaneously printing multiple ways to hose it. Because, like, it takes something that's convoluted and, like, makes it even more so. Not really, Gendy. The quality of the decks is pretty much the same on both. And the event doesn't let me... when I'm playing the events, it's because I kind of care about my ladder rank, but I really don't care. I've qualified for the last 2 events and then just not played them. So, really just couldn't care less about the ladder rank. Yeah, I agree with that too. Protection coming back was also kind of a spit-in-your-face type moment because I really think they hit a sweet spot in terms of design with hexproof from specific colors. How come I ended up not playing them? I mean, the value proposition on Magic tournaments is always awful. This current standard format just doesn't have any decks that I really like playing in it that are good. Like, there's some decks that are fine, but like... all of the decks that are good in this format, I really don't enjoy the play patterns of. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to be moving to playing less of it and playing more historic. Teamer Adventures, Jeskai Fires. These are things I don't really enjoy. Various red Embercleave aggro that are basically combo decks. Just really not my cup of tea personally. And again, if you like the format, more power to you. You can and should enjoy it. But for me personally, those decks don't really scratch that itch that I play Magic to scratch. Punish for not decreeing this with the second one. No, the United States Congress has not passed any legislation regarding financial relief for normal people yet. I guess that's not strictly true. They technically passed legislation regarding some sick leave style stuff, but the sick leave style legislation that they passed does not apply to companies that have 500 or more employees, and companies that have 50 or fewer employees can apply for hardship exemptions. So they passed some legislation, but it effectively doesn't impact most people. Do I know what Pioneer deck I'm playing tomorrow? I don't, Seth. Whatever's at the top of the queue. I didn't even think Pioneer's at the top of the queue tomorrow. Yeah, Jeskai Tempo technically has the most points. Although red-green aggro doesn't sound terrible. Maybe we'll play red-green aggro. If that deck doesn't suck, I could actually see playing that on Saturday. I like smashing people. Big fan of smashing people. Old Bay Ray, thanks for the 16 months. I appreciate that. Welcome back. Is there an issue with the overlay, Mike Viking? It claims to be working here. Never not dead to cleave. And again, this is why like one of the things I personally find incredibly satisfying about Magic is playing mid-range and control decks. What was the rhetoric used to excuse 500 plus? So the reason why, and this is again, call your representatives, let them know that it's not okay. Stop voting for Republicans if you're not an idiot. The reason why companies that have 500 plus employees were exempt from the bill that got passed was because the GOP wouldn't vote for the bill and pass it if it didn't have an exemption for large companies. That was the compromise. Pelosi asked what it would take for them to pass anything, and that was the stipulation they required to be in there. So remember, at the end of the day, the Republicans are working for billionaires and big businesses, and they're not working for normal people. Neoliberals like Biden and Pelosi, I don't agree with them on a fundamental level on a lot of principles, but at least they're not doing crap like that. At least at the end of the day, they are trying to, the way in which they're trying to improve people's lives, I wish they were more aggressive about it, but they are at least working to improve things. Why of the day, thanks for the half year, I appreciate that, welcome back. Sure, yeah, the sick leave thing isn't enough by any means, but again, you need to understand that like even that got gutted. Sorry, to finish my thought regarding play patterns, one of my favorite things about Magic in general is playing against small edges aggro decks, and small edges aggro decks basically don't exist in this format. And what I mean by that is looking at like traditional red aggro based around creatures with a little bit of reach, or like white weenie aggro from a couple of standard seasons ago. Those types of decks are the ones that I enjoy personally the most. What does that mean, Balia? Can you put that into English for us instead of jargon? What is the issue with hiring an MMT proponent? What is an MMT proponent? At least we have Questerson to kill Teferi here. Questerson also will cover the 4 power clause for this. So if they don't take Questing Beast off the table, we'll get to draw 2 cards next turn, which would be nice. Hey, Korluski, good morning. Like a mosh, stay safe out there. That swaps the roles of fiscal and monetary policy. So you use jargon to explain your jargon. which is peak whatever. What beats these Jeskai decks losing a lot? Nothing, BDP. I just mostly haven't been playing standard. Getting constantly Brazen Borrowered and Teferied and just everything else just like hasn't been fun. In some cases both. Just like, yep. Capitalism is a thoroughly discredited economic policy, but it's sure not stopping everyone else. Yep. You're not wrong. MMT proponents think the US government can print more money to make things work and stop worrying about deficits. So, so to a normal person like me, that sounds kind of true. Like, can you tell me when the last time the deficit really mattered? Because the deficit just goes up, right? Like, acknowledging that the deficit doesn't matter sounds like reality. I don't know. We've tried this whole capitalism thing for so long. Maybe it's time to explore other avenues. Thanks for the sub, Gifty Beetle. Missed the Pioneer portion. How did it go? I quit after a match and a half. I will not be playing a mid-range deck on Saturday. You have 242 speed before the buff. That's pretty good. I think I'm about the same on my Seeker. My speed lead's only like 24% though. So it sounds like it's lower than yours. All right, so this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I can play this for X is 8. Yeah, raid. Raid arena specifically. Would like to fight the returned king, please. So, like, the teamer deck that people have been pointing to, I know the one you're referring to, it really shows that people don't really understand the type of decks I like, I've learned. Like, if you look at that Elder Deep Fiend deck, it's not really like decks that I like to play or that are up my alley, in my opinion. That deck is basically just a derpy ramp deck. It's just like happens to play Deep Fiend as part of its derpy ramp plan. It's just like another ramp deck, basically, that plays Delirium stuff. I think a lot of the builds play Uro as well. You can always tell which Republican supporters are extra big idiots and don't actually understand what happens in the government when they try and talk about the budget and keeping it balanced, like that's a Republican thing to do. It shows a complete divorce from reality and what actually happens when people are in power. Is Inverter a miserable deck to play? It's just not interesting. I've been out of bitch for 2 weeks, and I haven't been on a computer while watching, but now I work from home, so I speak with authority again. God bless. The feather decks are bad against these new combo decks, Pomoyne. They're not linear enough, and they're not interactive enough. It's both sad and frustrating, Admirals. A lot of the people who are most likely to literally die from COVID don't seem to be taking it seriously, in large part due to elected leaders like Donald Trump downplaying the severity of the issue for a long time. Thanks for the 2 months only, Lasagna. If they continue not taking it seriously, there'll be fewer people voting against their own best interests. This is the depressing reality. All right, so this doesn't seem good against them bouncing our stuff. This seems, I guess this doesn't get bounced by Teferi. I think I keep the Gods Willing. Is this a Brontodon matchup? It might be. Serpent blocks Trawler. I guess. We're probably dead if they're sitting there hitting us with a Trawler. Oh yeah, I've like typed and deleted a tweet about them sending out checks a couple of times. And yeah, I'm super excited for people who told me they couldn't vote for Bernie Sanders because they don't do socialism to tell me how good of an idea sending everybody checks is. A lot of that age group around where I live also has a who cares if I die, I had a good life mentality. That's like peak boomer and older generation. I don't care if I spread an otherwise preventable disease because I had a good life, screw the people I'm leaving behind. That's why we're in the climate issue that we're at. I don't actually like the $1,000 in theory, but it might be practical now. I don't see why I get $1,000 while still working and someone out of work is getting the same. They should get more and I should get less. So part of the I agree with you in concept, Beetle, but in practicality, figuring out who is still working and who is not and who's working at the same rate, that amount of bureaucracy probably takes longer to get it done, which will lead more people who really need it to have it happen. I don't know. That's called means testing, yeah. Yeah, it would likely cost more money to figure out. That's how, like, a number of states have tried to test, we're gonna drug test you before we send you any kind of government assistance, and they spend more money drug testing people than they save in denying benefits to people who tested positive for drugs they don't want to give benefits to. So it just, like, doesn't make sense from a practical standpoint. It definitely doesn't make sense from a moral standpoint. Correct. If you decide you don't need the money, you can just donate it. Keezers! Let's get you a sword to go with that shield. Thank you for the 12 months of support. I appreciate that. If we hit some lands here, we could be okay. And like I do have this next turn, which is nice. So like if they untap and play fires, even if I missed my land drop, I can go bonds into night if I hit an untapped land here. That's true too. That's a good observation. Part of the reason to give money to people is to not just help people who literally can't survive without it, but also to try and salvage some of the economy. And people who don't need that money will take that money and spend it or donate it. So it's still accomplishing a goal, even if people don't need it to live. Feels like we're dead here at this point. Man, yikes. Fiscal conservatism in one chart. Who increased the debt? That's such a good chart. I'm gonna bookmark this one. Just gonna link idiots this. Who increased the debt? That's so weird. That's so... Look at all these fiscal conservatives. They're so conservative, chat. That's so good. That's my bookmark button. I came back and we appear to have died. Rough. Alright, let's hit some land drops, huh? I'm excited to play this on 3 and then have Teferi unsummon the token. Privatize the gain, socialize the losses. Yep. One of the... I saw a note from someone regarding bailing out some of the industries that are suffering right now, and they had a note that any bailout that happens in these industries should be tied to a stipulation that any industry that takes a bailout is banned from doing stock buybacks for a certain amount of time, which I think would be an incredibly good stipulation to tie into any bailout money. Banned until they pay back the stimulus. Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. So this draws 2 cards if I have a creature with 4 or more power next turn. So I'm going to play this Hydra and double it up so that way I can attempt to draw 2 cards. So for people that don't understand why banning stock buybacks until they repay any money that they've gotten is, stock buybacks are a way that large companies use to increase their value for their shareholders. They basically buy up their stocks when they have excess profit, which in turn increases the value of their individual stocks. Is that an accurate description? That's my understanding of it. If that understanding is not accurate, please someone correct. This was a submission. Oh, second Night of Autumn. Or second way to kill this. Questing Beast sounds great. I think I'm gonna go ahead and pass here. Yeah. We might actually run them down here. Although I don't currently have anything in my bin to get back. Alright, sure. Scoreboard. I think I mulligan this. No acceleration, no cheap plays. I guess. It's Questy Beast or Hoarding Hydra. It has 3 heads, so it's like an honorary Hydra. Probably just need the land drops here. He's a streamlined Hydra, that's why it has haste. I like those, this man. So we have Voracious Hydra to kill the priest next turn at least. Comes in as a 2/3 and gets to fight the 1/2. Although now they're probably just going to leave the activation up. Yeah. That makes sense. I think I still just play the Hydra and like force them to sack their things here. And then next turn I can play the second Hydra since we drew another. So we're just like in the same spot as last turn again. I think I'm just gonna hit a land drop. I think I'm just gonna hit a land drop, he says to himself optimistically. Get to play this out at least. Insulate this from an edict next turn. Yep. Castle is ugly because it cost me $5 to foil it. Hey, they're not just professional economists, Y-Sticks. They're lawyers and astronauts and doctors too. Don't you downplay the credentials of my chat. It's a real shame we didn't draw a land there, because if we could have played this as a 3/4, it could block the Oath Riders profitably. Or Renaissance, yep. I don't know that land. Can you elaborate why you think my deck needs more lands? I have 25 lands. I have 3 cards that dig for lands, and I have 4 Paradise Druids. So you could make the argument that I have 32 mana sources in my deck. So other than anecdotally being unlucky in my current game, could you tell me why you don't think my deck has enough lands? You too, Zombie Token. Thanks for keeping me around. We're pretty dead here. Let's go to the next one. Here's $5 for whaling up the castle and $15 for a stimulus package. Thanks for the bits, JD Square. I appreciate it. 4 Devout Decree on our sideboard, mostly for this matchup, but also mono red. Trim, the Stonecoil Serpent. This is actually probably good on this. Knight of Autumn seems okay here. Protection spell seems kind of whatever. They don't have a ton of targeted removal. About to write an online exam for the first time that my professor is giving us half the time for, with harder questions to ensure that no one does too well because you could use your notes. When I taught classes, unless the school I taught at had an explicit policy regarding open note tests, all of the exams that I gave were open notes in my math classes. I didn't like to do open book exams because open book exams mean some students wouldn't prepare at all and they'd just try and use the book and they'd flounder around for too long. But open notes exams are pretty good in my experience because most students would like summarize the things they felt were important on their notes and then they're studying by summarizing. Yeah, and you get to use notes in real life. So like reference materials make sense when you're preparing people for the real world. And some colleges I taught at actually did have policies where allowing students to do that wasn't allowed, which was awful, but yeah. It is basically a means of tricking them into studying. That is exactly what it is. Allowing students to use notes during an exam, but not letting them use their textbook basically forces them to organize if they're even a little bit prepared. How many schools did I work at? 4? 3? It was 3, 1, 2, 3 different colleges. 3 different colleges. 4, nah, 4 if you count my graduate assistantship, it's 4. If you count student teaching at a high school, it's 5. Postgraduate degree, I taught at 3 different colleges. I also taught classes while I was in grad school, though. Should I even have shocked that in? I'm actually just supposed to Hydra's growth this, right? Like, this isn't even useful. Let's give them a free 2-pointer. Hardest math class. For me, personally, I struggled with linear algebra. I passed it, but as far as, like, material being challenging going, linear algebra was the class I personally struggled the most with. Deck list for Cleave siblings and everything else as always can be found in the deck queue on my website. My linear algebra class was a proof space linear algebra class. I really liked real analysis. That was actually a class I did quite well in. And it could have been just a difference in teacher too. I had different teachers for them. Because real analysis is a ton of proof writing. I remember my teacher for my real analysis class during undergrad. He handed back he handed back an exam and I got a 99 on it. And on one of the problems, he just drew a line. He just drew a red line through part of it and wrote -1 on it. And when I asked him about it, his exact response was, I don't give perfect grades. Which was just like, that's just rude. Right? Listen, some people end up being teachers because they're kind of on a power trip, okay? Not most of them aren't that way, but there are like, you know, that is a thing that like, all right, so we're super dead, right? It does take a strange type of person to go into higher level math. You're not wrong. I feel like anybody who like finishes their PhD in math, like you're like kind of on a different level and mindset than most people. It's stupid that most researchers in academia have to be teachers. That's true. I agree with that. You definitely, especially during grad school. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Did we get out? Did we get out? We did. All right. We had someone donate to foil the castle. Ooh, that's not the button I want. It's been so long since I left my house. And like, it's so long until I plan on leaving my house. It keeps being like happy surprises when I look outside and there's weather. It's like, oh, look, it's raining today. Or, oh, look, it snowed. Because like, I'm just not looking at the weather forecast because I have no plans to go outdoors. It's like, in normal, like, at least, even though I typically didn't leave the house much before this, like, still be conscious because of, like, taking Declan to daycare or, like, Jake down to the bus or picking him back up. But just, like, not having to make an effort. Yeah, outside weather feels like a simulation right now. That's a good summary. David, I don't know that you should expect that to happen. I think you might want to talk to your fiance about the very real possibility that having a big gathering for that's not going to be a thing to do. You're planning in like, you're scheduled approximately 8 weeks, right? Like, yeah, eloping might be the smart move. Ha. So do I jam Questerson here, or do I Bonds of Flourishing to dig for a knight to kill this? I think I just want to jam Questerson. So Questerson says combat damage that will be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. So this doesn't impact our prevention things. Your sister has a wedding scheduled for Lion, we're likely to cancel. Yeah, that's pretty realistic. That's unfortunate. Yeah. The realistic attitude, yeah, the realistic outcome of this is that some amount of social distancing and gatherings being kept to minimum sizes is likely going to be a recommendation until they work out a real vaccine. That's why, that's part of the reason why there's people looking into things like implementing some type of UBI, because this could be a while. Yes, we are not even at the peak right now. We probably won't hit the peak of cases until over the summer. Value Town, thanks for the 2 months. Welcome back. 18 months is likely on the generous low side of when to expect a vaccine. Nanobots, thanks for the quarter of a year. Welcome back. Thanks for keeping me around. How do I feel about Rakdos Cats nowadays? I think it's a fine, mostly linear deck. I think it has an awful matchup, like borderline unwinnable against Jeskai Fires. I think it's pretty okay against, this current opponent's archetype that we're playing against. Yeah, that's also true. Getting it distributed and making sure everybody gets it even once it's tested. I can't wait to be brazen borrowed into oblivion. That's, yep. And again, like, this is such a good example of why the opponent's archetype is so good. Like, they've gummed up the board now while generating card advantage, and they're just going to sit here and draw more cards. Even if this first vaccine works, it needs 14 months of clear follow-up to make sure it doesn't have long-term effects. And if we're going to give it to everyone, the issues, yes, correct, Tobias. The vaccine is going to I Am Legend us. Yikes. The opponent's archetype is just such an incredible mix of tempo, board presence, and card advantage. You know, after playing a bunch with Field of the Dead, in Historic, both with Field of the Dead and against Field of the Dead, I honestly think the standard format would be better if Field of the Dead was legal. Like, our colors literally just don't have a way to take Innkeeper off the table, which kind of sucks. I think I'm just boarding in a bunch of Ceratops to have things to run them down. Yeah, with Innkeeper and Clover out, the adventure cards do 4 things. Yeah, it's a good summary. Hydra's growth's unplayable against bounce spells. Stonecoil Serpent's not great against bounce spells. Oh, I have Voracious Hydra to kill in Keeper. We've got that going for us. Sure. It's not all hope is lost. The opponent's deck is very, very good. Everything's better when fielded as legal. Yep. Yep. And again, just like big hopes for Historic, not only because of how they're injecting cards into it, but also just because of how they're managing the ban list. The fact that the format's been around for like less than 6 months, and we've already had bans and unbans, just shows a huge difference in how they plan to manage that format versus others. Nah, I don't think so. Genesis Protect, I think that's too slow. I think that doesn't keep up with what the opponent's archetype is doing either. Tulsi Gabbard dropped out of the race. Well, so Tulsi Gabbard wasn't running for president. She was running to say, I'm present. So apparently she's decided she no longer wants to be present. Tulsi Gabbard no longer present. She endorsed Biden. I'm gonna swallow back some bile before I say this, but it's a good thing she endorsed Biden. Bernie will likely be dropping and endorsing Biden very soon. Hopefully very soon. Bernie's path to the presidency after this latest set of primaries is no longer realistic. And continuing to hold primaries under our current conditions without reforming the voting system is irresponsible. I just like the record to reflect I've always been a realist. So to every steaming turd out there who got upset when I said Warren should have dropped earlier and they accused me of just being a Bernie bro, no, I was never a Bernie bro. I just wanted what was best for progressives and best for the American people. You were the one who didn't want, anyone who didn't want Warren to drop when I suggested she should, you were the biased one. If this was a normal election year and there wasn't currently everything surrounding COVID going on in this country, I would want Bernie to run it down to the end and play to every last out of getting the nomination. In reality, where I live, he should drop out because it's the socially responsible thing to do for the health of people voting. That's just reality. It is. Coronavirus changes the situation, and anyone who doesn't think that changes it is irresponsible, illogical, and incredibly biased. Spy Mania, thanks for the brand new Prime support. I appreciate that. Welcome. Thanks for keeping me around. We were able to pressure them there. The big difference between game 1 and game 2 there was my opponent wasn't able to deploy Lovestruck Beast, and Lovestruck Beast is really, between that and Bone Crusher Giant, just gives the opponent's archetype so much game against aggressive decks. Let's keep the Gods Willing. I like blowing out Borrower with it. I hope Biden makes a good faith effort to encourage Bernie to endorse him. Whether it's by giving some on some of his policies, or appointing appropriate people, or picking a VP who's more on the progressive side, any of those things could be good. I think I need to just eat the innkeeper here. As bad as it feels. Gosh, if we would have just drawn a land here, we would have just completely blown them out, right? We would have gotten to God's Willing and stopped that and kill this. One Love, thanks for the 15 months. Welcome back. Hey, thanks for the 14 months, Kanjo. I appreciate that. So, I'm actually going to lead on this and then plan to Hydra next turn with God's Willing up, because I kind of expect them to have another Borrower or a Bone Crusher here, and since I drew the land to protect this, I'm going to wait so I can do that. The real upside to a Biden presidency would be that he'd be a one-term president, which means we'd get to have a chance to run and support a real progressive in 2024 again. And for anybody out there who's a Bernie supporter, that you're going to say something stupid like you could never support Joe Biden, I would encourage you to understand that if Trump gets another term, he's gonna get another Supreme Court appointment. And that would be so incredibly bad to progressive values, I can't even put it into words. I'm pretty sure he said directly on the campaign trail that he would be a one-term president, right? I don't have the link to the quote offhand, but I'm pretty sure that's a direct quote. He's also old enough that that might not be a choice that he makes personally, that someone else makes for him. A vote for Biden is a vote for mercy for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yes. The green castle foil just showed up on the store as a daily deal. Hashtag never lucky. JD squared, I regret nothing. That's fair. Yeah, it was JD squared's money. It wasn't my money. I have another questing beast, so I'm just gonna let this die. I don't know, Biden had really good turnout from boomers in a lot of states. So, like, Biden never said he'd be a one-term. He would try and run for re-election. Well, that's good to know. Thank you for the clear information. I appreciate the direct link. Catch-up fights. Thanks, the Drunk Owl. So, I guess with this in hand, I just attack That's the other thing. So like, there's also the tinfoil hat discussion of Biden had a bunch of Republicans vote for him. So hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully Democrats actually show up for Biden. We'll see though. I think I just want all my haste creatures at this point. I have no idea, Viking. That was the thing that was most disappointing to me personally. The fact that like the moderate Dems had so many great choices and they decided to go with the dinosaur is like real rough. I want to ask a question, and I don't know how I'm allowed to ask it and have it be okay. Why is it okay and socially acceptable to refer to African Americans generically as a group as black voters? I feel like if you referred to an entire group of people like that in any other context, it would be appropriately classified as racist. Can someone help me understand why that's a socially acceptable thing to do in the context of politics when I feel like that wouldn't be acceptable anywhere else? Like, why is it, like, that's something that's done by the news media and candidates. It happens so many places. There's a huge range of African Americans, just like there's a huge range of people in general, right? Yeah, they do it for other minority groups too. I don't know what the appropriate term is. And part of the reason why I haven't brought this up is I don't understand. I don't want to use the incorrect term and upset people, but like I just genuinely don't understand why that difference is there. Yeah, I have two things here, chat. This is pro blue. They're pro blue. Yeah, I have two. They're dead. So I really feel like, It's so weird to me that it seems inappropriate. So looking at that matchup and thinking on ways we can improve this, the big standout to me from there in the game one that we lost and the post-board games that we won is one, we were able to keep their threat off the board, right? Or we were able to keep their Lotus off the board. The other thing is, what's his name didn't rear his ugly head. Lovestruck Beast. Stonecoil Serpent's not a constructed playable card, really. Not in standard, at least. I'm going to cut him and put some giant killers in here to kill Lovestruck Beast. Pile of haste creatures was also great. I'm going to put the fourth questing beast in the sideboard over this Conqueror's Death. Let's try another here. Perceived trends and how those demographics tend to vote. Yeah, I understand that, Demir Spy, but I just don't understand. And again, it's probably just because I don't have that experience. I don't understand how you can say folks from these cultural heritage tend to vote in a certain way and how that's different than racial profiling in general. Like, I don't understand how you're able to, why that's okay to do. So it's getting a little bit warm and want to take my hoodie off there. If you want to see the hoodie come off with the webcam on, make sure you're a tier 3 sub so you have access to my private Snapchat. I don't want to be paying for that. Easy land tier. Need to hit some land drops. Since I'm working from home, how does that affect NSFW? Good question. So I think I'm just playing this in passing, because they're probably a Reclamation deck with Growth Spiral, so I think I want to sit on this to kill a Reclamation. Well, I'm not sure we can beat this card. We're still 2 land, or wait for 1 land off of this eating it. All right, got it. Hey, the Giant Slayers we just added are good. Interesting, Brightstar. That seems like a reasonable distinction. It's analyzing trends about subgroups, which is fundamentally different than generally racial profiling, which is extrapolating a thing about a group down to a specific person. I guess that makes sense to me. Thank you for providing that distinction. So, if they're a counterspell deck with Nightbake Ambusher, Ceratops sounds good. Questing Beast actually probably isn't good here, because it just trades with Wolves and it's an expensive card that gets counterspelled. Well, this is even more expensive that gets counterspelled. I don't think I want this, because it's a threat that just gets attacked down. Let's try this. That's a dangerous line to take, though, because racists are fine making group-level inferences without necessarily making individual gains. That also makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. It always, as someone who hasn't really paid attention to politics, that was something that's like made me feel uncomfortable or felt wrong this campaign cycle looking at it. Because that's something that seems like it just accepted as like, this is okay to do and say. And like, to me, it seems like that should not be okay to do and say. SP Joe, thanks for the 10 months. Welcome back. So I think because they showed us Flash Wolf, I'm just going to play this out aggressively. Yeah, it looks like they're just a flash deck. It's something I hadn't thought about until this campaign cycle. It's something I wasn't really aware of, Talrand. Today will be the last day the Bernie banner is in the rotation. In fact, it's gone now. There's a blank spot there. I archived the Bernie banner because I'm kind of the opinion that Bernie should be dropping out at this point. And I just, unless we rip like Giant Killer next turn, I'm not sure we can beat this, wolf. Oh, right. This needs double. Well, I guess that's still good to do, though, huh? So I can give one of them trample. I would much more happily vote for Buttigieg or Klobuchar rather than Biden. Really, really wish we had gotten one of the not almost 80-year-old moderates as opposed to Joe Biden. Well, they have to chump block 1, which is good. If they do, they go to 3. Okay, so they're trading. That makes sense. So they're trading and they're going to 8, and I'll have 2 left. They have 6 cards in the bin now. So they get to escape Uro here, but Uro notably can't block Ceratops, but he does put them to 11, so they're not dead on board. I don't know. If you want to talk about records, Biden's voting record's kind of awful. Thanks for the 14 months of Prime Myth. I appreciate that. Welcome back. How's that Brutal Clan boss? Is it almost dead? Is it halfway? I spent my 2 keys on it this morning. Klobuchar was off-putting during the debates. I don't know. Klobuchar felt fairly genuine to me. I felt like she believed the things she was talking about. At the very least. I thought she was fine, and even if I didn't agree with her on policy, I felt like she believed in what she was saying at the very least. It's such a low bar for politics. I don't like her policies, but she was actually genuine. Like that's the bar I have to clear. Hopefully the trample on these Ceratops just wins the game here. Do I want to jump block here? This 1 extra point of damage might be relevant, huh? And the game's ending next turn one way or another, right? Well, it doesn't make sense for me to put 1/1 counters on the 1/1. I'd rather put them on the creature that's going to trample. Oh, so we're dead? I believe we're dead. So I trample for 1, trade here. This dies, they take 1. They get to keep going with this, and this. Yeah, I feel like this went mostly as expected. I feel like this falls in the category of a lot of decks that often fail, which is that, like, it wasn't particularly linear and it wasn't particularly interactive. To break the hearts of people who like the theme that we're playing with, all 3 of these cards were pretty generically bad. I feel like the one thing to me that I took away from playing this was that God's Willing's a really good card, and I feel like, and it could just be like that we haven't had the right shells for this to really shine in, but I feel like outside of Feather, this card hasn't gotten a lot of play, and I feel like it's much better than the level of play that it's gotten so far. If that makes sense. Like this being a combat trick, especially against Brazen Borrower, felt very, very good. And Borrower's one of those cards that's kind of omnipresent in the current standard format, so having a card that's good against that seems like it would be a good tool if there's another white aggressive deck in this format. Maybe even the white Devotion aggro deck that we'd kind of written off, or the green enchantment aggro. Those are decks that playing God's Willing in could maybe make them better. I could see that being reasonable. Yeah. All right, so what are we doing? I'm gonna hit a quick ad roll while I get things flipped over and get our wonderful memory leaking client restarted. We've got 3 historic decks at a minimum coming up here today. When we get back, we are gonna kick things off with some white with a small blue splash for Meddling Mage and some other tools. Humans. So we'll be back in just a few with some historic. Thanks for hanging out today, folks. Don't go anywhere. Well, it causes auras to fall off in the enchantment deck. Yeah, that's fair. And that deck has a Commensura's Blessing anyways. Yeah, it probably doesn't fix that deck.